Dean Martin's hand was shaking. It was the middle of a live television taping. NBC Studios. 300 people sat in that audience. Millions more were watching from their living rooms across America. And Dean Martin, the man who had made this country laugh for decades, could not speak. His face had gone pale. His eyes were wet. The paper in his hand trembled, light and uncontrollable. Someone stood up from their chair. The band stopped playing. A voice crackled through Dean's earpiece, sharp and confused. Dean, you're live. But Dean Martin wasn't listening. Dean Martin wasn't listening. He was staring past the footlights at a little girl standing where she shouldn't have been. Front row. Close enough that he could see the crease in her dress where it had been folded too long. Close enough to notice the tape wrapped around her wrist, holding a man's watch in place. Too big. Too heavy. Sliding anyway. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just stood there, holding a folded piece of paper like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. The studio had gone still. Not the comfortable stillness Dean knew how to play with. This was wrong. 300 people quiet at once. No coughs. No shifting. Even the lights seemed harsher without laughter to soften them. Dean cleared his throat. Nothing came out. Someone behind the cameras whispered his name again. He ignored it. He set the glass down on the edge of the stage. His fingers missed the mark. The glass tipped, rolled once and shattered on the floor. The sound snapped through the room. He bent down slowly, knees stiff, one hand braced against the stage. Up close, the girl smelled faintly of soap and paper. Her shoes were scuffed at the toes. She looked up at him without fear. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily." Her voice was calm. Too calm for someone that young. Dean nodded. He forced a smile he'd worn for 30 years. "That's a pretty name." She didn't respond. "My daddy loved you," she said. A murmur moved through the audience. Dean felt it like a breeze against his back. He'd heard that sentence 1,000 times in his life. Fans. Letters. Backstage hellos. He knew exactly what to say. "Your daddy sounds like a smart man." She shook her head once. "He's not here." Dean's smile tightened. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "He died," she said. No pause. No drama. "He was supposed to bring me tonight." Dean's chest pulled inward. He glanced at the empty seat beside her. Front row. Unused. He looked back at the watch slipping down her wrist. She held out the paper. "He wrote this for you." Dean hesitated. The cameras were still rolling. The audience was still silent. Somewhere, a producer was deciding whether to cut to commercial. Dean took the paper. It was creased soft, like it had been opened and folded again and again. He unfolded it once. "Read the first line." And that was when Dean Martin stopped being a performer. His jaw tightened. His shoulders sank a fraction. His eyes dropped back to the page. The room waited. The letter pulled Dean backward. Not in time. And wait. The studio lights blurred as the words on the page sharpened. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, pressed hard enough that the ink bled through in places. Not a fan letter. Not praise. Something else. Something heavier. Dean kept reading. 8 weeks earlier, Emily's world had already ended. Her father, Michael Warren, was 34 years old. A janitor at a public high school outside Pasadena. Early mornings. Late nights. The kind of man who smelled like cleaning solution and coffee by the time he came home. He wasn't famous. He wasn't important. But to Emily he was everything. Every night after dinner, Michael sat in the same worn chair, loosened his tie and turned on the television. Dean Martin. Same time. Same ritual. Emily curled against his side, her head tucked under his arm, listening to laughter ripple through the room. Michael laughed hardest of all. He laughed at jokes he'd already heard. At pauses he could anticipate. At the way Dean leaned into the microphone like none of it mattered. When Emily asked him why he liked that man so much, Michael answered without looking away from the screen. "Because when he's on," he said, "the world feels lighter." 3 months before the accident, Michael did something he'd never done before. He entered a radio contest. Called again and again until his voice went hoarse. When he won, he stood in the kitchen shaking, the phone still in his hand. Front row tickets. He lifted Emily off the ground and spun her until she squealed. We're going to see him, he said. Close enough to see him breathe. September came before the night ever could. A drunk driver ran a red light. Michael's car never crossed the intersection. Emily was supposed to be with him. A cold kept her home. The ticket stayed in the nightstand. His watch stayed on the dresser. Time stopped moving the way it used to. By November, Emily hadn't smiled. Hadn't slept through a night. Karen didn't know what to do with the tickets. Throwing them away felt wrong. Using them felt impossible. Emily decided. Daddy wanted me to go. The night before the taping, Karen found her sitting on the bed, paper spread across her knees, tongue pressed to the corner of her mouth as she wrote. When asked what it was, Emily folded the page and slipped it into her pocket. It's for him. Now Dean stood on a stage holding the end of that decision in his hands. The room waited. The cameras rolled. And Dean Martin read the next line. His breath caught. Because the letter wasn't about him at all. Dean Martin felt the room tilt. The letter wasn't thanking him. It wasn't asking for anything. It was a confession. He read silently at first, lips barely moving, eyes tracking each line as the studio waited. The handwriting pressed harder as the sentences went on, as if the man writing it had known he was running out of time. Mr. Martin, you don't know me. You never will. But when I was 12 years old, you saved my life. Dean's shoulders tightened. The letter carried him back decades, long before Emily, long before the stage lights. A boy in Nebraska. A factory accident. A father who didn't come home. A house that went quiet in a way children don't understand. Weeks without speaking. A mother who didn't know how to reach her son. Then a television left on too late. Dean read the line twice. I heard you laugh before I understood the joke. And for the first time since my father died, I laughed too. The studio disappeared. Dean felt heat behind his eyes, a pressure he fought the way he'd fought everything his whole life, by pretending it didn't matter. I watched you every night after that. When money was tight. When my wife got sick. When life felt heavy. You made it lighter. You reminded me that pain doesn't get the last word. Dean's hand began to shake again. He adjusted his grip on the paper. The cameras caught it. The audience felt it. I won tickets to your show. Front row. I was going to bring my daughter. I won't be able to now. Dean swallowed. I have cancer. The doctors say I don't have long. I'm not afraid. I've already lived longer than I thought I would, and I've laughed more than I ever expected. If my daughter meets you, please tell her that laughter is how we survive. It's how we stay. The page blurred. Dean reached the bottom. He didn't lower the letter. Silence stretched. 30 seconds. An eternity on live television. Someone stood up in the audience. Then another. No applause. Just people holding their breath. Emily stepped closer. She reached out and touched Dean's hand. Her fingers were warm. Steady. He said you'd understand, she whispered. Dean looked at her. Really looked at her. The watch slipping down her arm. The empty seat beside her. The courage it took to stand there. He tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. I need to tell you something, he said finally, his voice breaking the way his image never had. About her father. He turned toward the cameras, the audience, the country watching. And for the first time in his career, Dean Martin stopped performing and started telling the truth. Dean didn't read the rest of the letter out loud. He folded it once. Carefully. Like it might tear if he rushed. The studio was still silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. He knelt again, slower this time, until he was eye level with Emily. Your father, he said, choosing each word like it mattered, understood something most people don't. Emily watched his mouth, not blinking. He learned how to carry pain without letting it harden him. And he wanted you to know that joy isn't something you wait for. It's something you practice. Emily's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She nodded once, small and deliberate, like she was storing the words somewhere safe. Dean reached into his jacket pocket. His fingers found the folded square of cloth he carried every night. Navy blue. White edge. The same one worn soft from years of handling. He held it out to her. I wear this every time I come out here, he said. I want you to have it. When things feel heavy, remember what your dad taught you. Emily took it with both hands, clutched it to her chest. Dean stood and walked her back to her mother. Karen's face was wet, her hands shaking as she pulled her daughter close. Dean leaned in and spoke low just for her. Your husband was a brave man. He turned back to the audience, to the cameras, to the country that had always seen him smiling sideways, never serious, never still. We're going to take a break, he said. But before we do, remember this. The people who make us laugh are sometimes the ones teaching us how to live. When the applause came, it wasn't loud at first. It rose slowly, unevenly, until the entire room was standing. Backstage, Dean kept Emily and Karen with him. He signed a photograph, wrote a note he didn't rehearse, promised something he didn't announce. Every year after that, on one quiet night, he told a joke for a man no one else knew. Emily grew up. The watch fit her wrist. She learned to help children who carried the same kind of loss. In her office, a small square of navy cloth hangs in a frame. Not as a souvenir. As a reminder. That laughter doesn't erase pain. It helps you survive it. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs it.